Turning Red is the newest animation brought to us by Disney and Pixar. The story of this movie revolves around this 13-year-old girl named May. She's this Chinese-Canadian student. She enjoys, a bunch of different things that typical 13-year-old girls like doing, hanging out with friends, listening to boy bands. And then one day she soon discovers that whenever she exhibits really strong emotions like anger, fear, anxiety, or sadness, anything like that, anything really extreme, she turns into this big giant red panda. Apparently it's some kind of curse or ability that has been passed down in her family for generations, and now she has a very limited amount of time before she can rid herself of this transformation, before it's going to be stuck with her forever. I love Disney and Pixar. As far as animated movies go, nobody does it better than them. So anytime they release any movie, of course I'm going to check it out. There's no way I can't see it. And like most Pixar movies, this movie was getting absurdly good reviews. A lot of people were really raving over it, which definitely got me more amped to see it. And as I just alluded to, most of the time, Disney and Pixar releases a great animated movie. They just, most of the time, hit out of the park. But sometimes they release some movies that have fallen flat, even to their standards. Because unfortunately, due to the bar that Disney and Pixar set for themselves, a movie can't just be good. A movie's got to be great. It's got to be amazing in order to reach that bar. Unfortunately for me, I certainly could be in a minority on this one, but not only is Turning Red not a great animated movie, I don't think it's a particularly good animated movie. And yeah, this could get me a lot of hate, but I'm gonna explain myself. First of all, getting into the characters in this movie, it's not that any of them weren't likable, but there wasn't anything particularly memorable that made me really get attached to any of them. May is kind of the stereotypical 13-year-old girl that you see in these animated movies. What does that mean? She's, got a wild, weird, crazy little personality. And sometimes that brings for some humor, sometimes it actually ends up being funny. Same deal with her friends, they kind of exhibit it the same way. I mean, she has a stereotypical group of friends, one's like the level-headed one, one's super just, weird and crazy, more so than she is and just out of it, and one's just very stoic and doesn't give a shit. That's pretty much the dynamic you get in any group of girlfriends in an animation. At least that's what I've noticed. And because of her personality and her friends' personalities, and the kind of stereotypical behavior and personalities that you see in these kids that are in this movie, it was hard for me to really get on board with them. It just wasn't anything original. It's something I've seen a bajillion times in a bunch of different movies. Also, it's one of the main focal points in this movie is May's relationship with her mother. Her mother, is really tough on her, really strict on her, really puts a lot of pressure on her. May doesn't really feel like her mom really understands her, which again is a storyline that we see in a lot of different movies, and that's a storyline that a lot of people can get behind. We see it all the time. The parent doesn't really understand their kid, the kid wants them to understand, and it leads to some tension. And one area that I actually did like about this movie is we do discover that apparently, her mother had the same kind of tension-filled relationship with her grandmother and never really mended, and you could say it's something that's just being passed down among the family, among parents, because we have always said that. There is that, saying, you grew up to become your parents. So however your parents raised you, however they treated you, if you have kids, that's probably along the lines of what you'll do. Some people break the cycle and be better, but what we grew up with is what's kind of burned into our mind. However, one thing that I didn't appreciate that this movie did is I don't think it really delved deep enough into the relationship between her mother and grandmother that explained more of the tension-filled relationship between the two of them. We get a little bit of a backstory to why things didn't work out between the two of them relationship-wise and why it's a little bit broken, but I would have liked to have seen more of it. I would have liked to have taken a deeper look into it to feel like you could understand more of why they're at odds and maybe why May's own mother is so tough on her. I think the other issue for me that kind of came into it is we never really got, I felt, clear resolution between the relationship with May and her mother. For most of the time in this movie, she's constantly trying to appease to her. She's kind of painting herself as the victim, like, oh, kids make fun of me because I'm weird, or it wasn't my idea to go along with this, when in reality, she was behind a lot of the things that she wasn't supposed to be doing. For me, I never really felt like we got complete and total closure to their relationship, or to the mending of their relationship. I felt like the final act of this movie kind of just throws it all at you in one final just act, and it never felt that fulfilling. I would have liked if it was a more progressive, relationship mending thing that went on for the entire movie. Similar a little bit to how in Finding Nemo, Nemo doesn't feel like his dad understands him, and the whole journey is not just Marlin going to find Nemo, but he's kind of discovering himself and starting to understand a little bit more why Nemo kind of had it out for him, and by the end, boom, you really feel like they've mended their relationship. I really wish the movie took a little bit more of that route. For me, it would have felt more believable, and the development between the two characters would have been way better. Also, I will say this much right now. I could definitely see where Pixar was going with this movie. This movie is supposed to be a metaphor for puberty. Kids growing up, your body's changing, your personality's changing, your interests are changing. I totally get that, and I'm all for a Pixar movie about that, because it would be relatable to anyone who's grown up, anyone who's just gone through changes. Here was the problem, though, I think this movie really dealt with. It's the fact that I think it didn't really know what tone it wanted to be. There are times, notably with a couple of recent Pixar movies that I've loved, Inside Out and Soul, the movie takes on these really smart concepts for just really what people deal with. Whether it's the emotions we feel or even dying, it sometimes goes for a little bit more of a mature tone and something that maybe adults will connect with more. Adults understand what it's like to find a purpose or to really feel emotions, more so than kids do. And as a result, you look at movies like Inside Out and Soul, and they were maybe movies that adults connected with more than kids did. They knew which tone they wanted to be, they knew the route they had to take to tell the story, and they stuck by it. Turning Red, at times, looked like it wanted to take a similar route because young kids who will see Turning Red maybe aren't fully going to connect to it yet. And as a result, adults would maybe connect to it more, or at least an older audience would. The problem is, this movie, most of the time, I felt like had no idea how it wanted to go about it. At one point it takes this route, like, we're going to be more mature, we're going to be a little more dramatic and serious with how we're going to tell this story and how we're going to illustrate, this whole message of the movie. And then immediately after that, they would do something silly and funny to the point where, for me, it wasn't even that funny. It felt something more like what little kids would relate to. Or not even relate to, just they would see that and they would laugh at it. This movie's humor, I don't think is really going to hit to a very wide audience. And that's kind of my thing there. It's like, Pixar movies aren't really meant to be kids' movies. They're meant to be family movies, They're the kind that the whole family can go and enjoy. And like I said, in the case with some of Pixar's movies, it's a little bit in the minority, but some of them, the whole family will enjoy, but especially the adults will. I think that's just what it is for me. It's like the fact that I'm an adult now and the fact that I've seen what Pixar is able to make catering a little bit more towards adults, maybe that's something I'm looking for in movies like this that are trying to take a more mature topic and make it into a movie. The fact that it went a little all over the place in deciding, okay, do we want to be more of a family movie, even a more mature family movie like we've done in the past, or do we want to kind of make this a straight-up kids movie? I never really felt like it knew which one it wanted to be. It's like, at some point, you're just like, just pick one and be it. It never really did that. All in all, I don't think Turning Red is a bad movie, but for me, it wasn't good either. It was just, this movie's just average. I think this movie meant well, and I do appreciate what it was trying to do, but the execution in it just didn't work for me. Couldn't really get on board with any of the characters, even if I felt and understood to a degree where some of them were coming from in their own stories. I thought the overall concept of this movie was clever. I thought some of the humor was good. Some of it was just, over my head, just not really, I feel, for my kind of audience. Again, the biggest problem this movie suffers from is it doesn't know which tone it wants to fall. It's like, it didn't know if it wanted to be a kid's movie or a family movie. As a result, it felt a little all over the place, and it didn't really feel focused. And that's something very lacking when it comes to Pixar movies. That's why I say this much. In the end, although I don't think this is the worst Pixar movie, certainly not. It's certainly not Cars 2 level bad or anything like that. It definitely really pairs in comparison to some of Disney and Pixar's real masterpieces out there. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.